fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back. Got my boy Luke Simons, like diamonds. And we've got Wyatt, the mock turtleneck guy. We made a lot of fun of you, and you decided to bring the heat today, dude.
Yeah, you were questioning whether I had the mock turtleneck. I wasn't going to give away, any surprises, but I'm here to show it off in all of its glory this week.
I don't want to say hideous because it looks nice with your hat, but it ain't pretty, dude.
Oh, well, it's my lucky charm for catching a lot of flounder, which is what we're going to talk about today. So revel in it.
Have you really caught a flounder wearing that turtleneck?
Again, like I said last week, now they're going to confirm or deny.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, welcome to this week's Tackle Tuesday. It's all about flounder. We've done a lot of flounder tips for our insider members. We have done 2 courses. One was Flounder Master that we did with, 9 different experts, Luke? Might have been, I think, 10 when you and CA were in there as well as kind of like bonus experts. And we started in Texas and moved, through the Gulf into Florida, past Florida, up all the way to New Jersey, where we ended with John Skinner himself. And that was our Flounder Mastery. It was certainly one of our top selling courses. It was awesome. But it's so great.
Still is awesome.
Still is awesome.
Still there.
But people always want more. Like, oh man, I want more. Like, it's like you can't get enough flounder tips. And I get it, especially because they're so doggone delicious and fun to catch. Kids love them. They're crazy looking. And then Skinner did Fluke Mastery, which is really tailored up toward the Northeast. All of his specific tips on fluke. And then Wyatt has been working on his own mini course that we are going to be hooking up our insiders with. And you might get a chance, if you're not an insider, I think you might be a little bit crazy, a little cray-cray. But we might give you guys a chance to purchase it. Otherwise, just join the Insider Club to get it for free. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, some of the tips and tactics, lures, best places, best tides, best mock turtlenecks to wear. We're going to be hitting up all of it. So where do you want to start, Wyatt? And we also, for those of you listening, we're doing this live on Facebook, so we'll start taking some questions from the peanut gallery as well.
Yeah, so I think probably the easiest place to start is what's working right now. So I think probably the best thing to do if you want to go out and catch flounder right now, just to kind of give a little bit of a background on what's happening. Flounder in a big period of transition right now. It's fall. They are moving from the inshore areas where they've been holding, it started in the spring when they moved in. They hung out, made summer homes all throughout the summer. We're eating on all the bait fish that showed up. And now that it's fall, they're about to transition again back offshore where they spawn for the winter. So all these flounder are in a really huge transition. There's really big numbers that are moving out of a lot of the areas that we can't get up into in the marsh, a lot of the big bay boats that can't get into those really shallow creeks where those flounder like to feed in the summer. Now they are moving out to the main channels. They're at those creek mouths. They're in the grass flats, moving out towards the passes and the inlets. Here in North Carolina, they're along the jetties. I've been having really good success at just any of those creek mouths that feed into intercoastal channels. They're all over the docks. Now it's just a great time to be catching them. But probably my most successful weapon in targeting flounder, other than my mock turtleneck, has been the Slam Shady Bomber, just because it's exactly the profile of bait that these flounder are looking for. A big mullet imitation, big glassman, any kind of big bait fish is really what they're after. If you look at a flounder's mouth, they've got these really big, giant dagger-like teeth. It's really consistent with a bait fish diet. We look at drum, they've got crushers that are more designed for eating crabs and shrimp and things like that. They will go after some bait fish, but flounder really love big bait fish imitations, and especially in dirty water like I've got up here in North Carolina, that giant tail on that Slam Shady Bomber really kicks and puts a lot of good vibration in the water. So just twitch, pause in this under some docks, at some creek mouths. I can feel out an area in, 3 or 4 casts, know if there's flounder there, and then just kind of bump to the next creek mouth and really just feel all the areas out that I need to with this. I know there's a lot of other lures that we're going to talk about, but by far this one has been the most productive for me for flounder. Any insiders who are, listening to this, you've seen all of my on the water reports. For those of you who aren't in the insider community, I show exactly where I fish, what I'm using, the whole 9. All the insiders can vouch. That is what I've caught 99% of my flounder on for like 2 months straight. I think the only flounder I didn't catch on the bomber in the past 2 months was on that marsh minnow when I was testing it out. So bomber has been my go-to lately in terms of flounder tackle for this Tackle Tuesday.
How are you rigging it?
Yeah, so what I've been having to use lately, we did talk about it last week on the trout and redfish rigs. I've been putting it on that Berkeley Fusion jig head just because all of my redfish eye jig heads for my strike have been out of stock. So I've just been playing around with different jig heads, things like that, and those have been working really well. I will put it on some of the trout eye jig heads that I still have. The only reason I don't like using those too much is just because the ones that I have are only 3/16 of an ounce. And when I'm fishing for flounder, I really like 1/4 ounce jig heads just because it keeps it down in their strike zone. I don't have any 1/4 ounce jig heads in the trout eye. So I just, that's the only other jig head I've been using besides that Berkeley Fusion, which I've been able to buy in 1/4 ounce jig heads.
Well, that's why I bought a 50 pack quite some time ago. I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
1/4. Man, that was a Cody self. Cody must have a notification turned on anytime we go live. He's like always the first one. Whoop, whoop. Oh, Cody. That's cool. So are you making, because I think a lot of people think, flounder are on the bottom, which is true. But looking at some of Skinner's videos, they don't necessarily always feed in the bottom. I know even our boy C. Richardson had that one video. I think it was with Chris Herrera in Jacksonville. And the flounder were like literally hitting top water, like coming out of the water. So my question to you is, you mentioned 1/4 ounce. How deep are you fishing? And are you always making sure to pop it off the bottom?
Yeah. So I'm usually going to fish my 1/4 ounce jig heads, and I'm going to be pairing those with those paddle tails. I'm going to be usually using those at those creek mouths that have some depth around the 3 to 5 foot range. Just because that is where I know that my 3/16 ounce jig heads aren't going to be staying on the bottom, especially with the current that I have here in the Carolinas. I need that 1/4 ounce jig head when it gets past 3 or 4 feet, just because I know it's going to stay down in that strike zone, even with high current areas like I'm fishing for flounder. Again, if I'm fishing shallower than that, if I'm up a little bit further in the marsh, which I'm not finding too many flounder deeper into the creek channels right now, they're kind of moving out of all that marsh area, moving towards the deeper intercoastal areas. Typically, I will fish, in that shallower marsh area with lighter jig heads. But now I'm definitely using a lot more 1/4 ounce jig heads. So that's why I wanted to make that distinction.
Cool. And real quick, Matthew Park says, very cool video, guys. How often do these go live? When should I expect my Salt Strong lure pack? 2-part question, Matthew. We try to do these on Tuesdays around this time, 1-ish. A lot of it depends on weather. If it's super nice, a lot of times we'll be out filming. That's where Tony is right now. If you guys are wondering where Tony is, he's trying to do some shore-based. Tony's normally in a kayak, and he's going to do some shore-based tips for our insider club. So stay tuned, you insiders. And when you get your pack, I don't know. We send out a lot of packs. If you're talking about one of the free packs or one of the paid packs, the bombers, I know we had like 200 orders come in just yesterday alone. Send us an email, support@saltstrong.com. We got a whole team of really awesome people waiting to help you out. Because we're not doing it from our houses here. Speaking of new things, we got a new office, new boat. Someone to mention that, Luke. We haven't caught a flounder off of it. I've only been fishing off it once. The weather's been so crazy. Finally broke it in and went out fishing Saturday. Got the first few fish, and then you went out the next day. Couple nice triple tail cobia. No flounder.
Boat's off to it. No flounder, and it's interesting that no junk fish either. So it was the first day was like 4 snook. All using lures too. Just want to make sure that no catfish get on it anytime soon. And then day 2, when I was just cruising the beaches, Just breaking in the motor. We have to run it for like 8 hours on a plane, and you have to kind of, judge or change the speed. And so finally got some calm weather. So I thought, let's just go ahead and just cruise the beaches and maybe come across a triple tail. And sure enough, I did, and I saw two really nice ones. Both of the nice ones ate, and they actually ate the leprechaun, which I'll talk about for flounder too, because they do work for flounder. I've got some of my biggest flounder on that type bait, but yeah, it was awesome. So the boat's off to an excellent start. Could not be happier. So I'm going to have some more triple tail this evening. We got some great meat out of those puppies. It was awesome. The tower is a game changer.
What do you think, triple tail or flounder, if in terms of taste?
Triple tail. Flounder's close second, though. Triple tail is my favorite. But flounder, and the flounder here specifically, I've actually been targeting lately because everything else is closed. I mean, like inshore, like the snook, redfish, trout, that's all closed right now. And it has been for quite a while. So inshore, flounders, in my opinion, by far the best tasting. Obviously, when triple tail come in, and I think it will beat it. But for the fish that's easier to catch on a consistent basis, which would be flounder, it's here. And although we don't have a ton in Tampa Bay, there are a good amount. And right now is actually one of the best times to catch them because they're like White said, they're funneling out. So the last time I was fishing some docks that were near a pass, I'm just bouncing jigs on the bottom, or I was using the shrimp lure in this case, but the paddle tails seem to do better. But when I was testing out the Brazilian shrimp lure that we have coming, I caught two flounder, and I was only fishing for like an hour and a half. One of them was a nice keeper that I brought home for dinner, and so they're there, and they'll be there for I would say probably another month or two, if not longer. So now even in Tampa Bay, which isn't known for a great flounder fishery, the local passes should be holding a good amount of fish. And it's not just Tampa Bay, it's really up and down the Gulf Coast. Because then on the Atlantic, I lived in Melbourne for a while, and I fished Sebastian Inlet a lot. In November, December, particularly November, Sebastian Inlet has some absolute giants. I never did get the 10-pounder, but a lot of 10-pounders get caught there, and now's the time. So if you're going to get out there, focus on those passes and inlets. And although they do hit top water every once in a while, it's something that you probably shouldn't plan for. And so like bouncing a lure on the bottom is going to be the best odds, because obviously that's where they stay. They're designed to ambush food from the bottom. So get right there in their face is going to increase the odds.
Yeah, but a lot of you guys, because I've heard it from people who have said, "Hey, I didn't know you guys kept many fish. I thought you were mostly catch and release," and we are. What you don't hear or see is Luke fishes pretty much every day. That doesn't mean all day long, but 30 minutes, 40 minutes, lives in the water, hit a button, boats in the water, and he catches so many fish. I was like, dude, why don't you post more pictures? Like, I don't want to post pictures. So he does throw back 98, 99% of all the fish he catches. Number two, what a lot of you don't know about Luke is he's got really, really, really curly hair. And now that he hasn't had a haircut in an entire year, he hasn't had a haircut this year as we're recording this in 2020. And the only way to prevent all these massive curls where it looks like he's got a perm is to not wash his hair. And so because he doesn't wash his hair, he stinks. He can't go to Publix, so he's got to catch his own fish every single week.
I was wondering where that was going.
Yeah, just to kind of tie it all in together. Luke is one stinky son of a gun. And the Publix there in St. Pete is kind of frowns upon him walking in. They said, "Oh, here comes that old bum. Oh, Lukey." Or
most of the fish here we can't keep right now. But I do release. I mean, the one true statement Joe did say is they're releasing 98% of the fish. But when I catch a flounder, I'm keeping 98% of the keepers. I have a really hard time releasing a keeper flounder because they taste so good.
I'm hoping someone here watching this is great on Photoshop and can dig a screenshot of Luke and do the big perm hair and send that to us. That would be awesome. So let's pivot back to flounder. So you talked about time for up there. Luke mentioned something that I believe is true. November and December, even in January. I mean, this is kind of a weird year in terms of the heat. I mean, it's still right now at 80 degrees out there here in most of Florida. What's the best time in let's just say the Carolinas, Georgia, the Carolinas for catching the big flounder, or consistent flounder, I guess is more important probably.
Yeah. So we're on the back end of like the heat of flounder fishing. It really starts picking up in August, and it's usually on fire through October. And, as November comes to a close, it's really starting to taper off, but you can still catch them into December, mid-December, really, just because if you're thinking about how those flounder move out of those marshes and they're traveling through those intercoastal zones, a lot of them, in the summer, they're pushing miles and miles back into a lot of these marshes, going north and south from these inlets. They're not really pushing inland, but some of these areas are really far from these inlets. So they still have to take this big journey to go out. And there still will be some juveniles that stay inshore that aren't, a breeding age. So you just kind of got to play around and know what the relative, temperature has been. If it's been, a really sharp cold snap and it's stayed cold, those flounder are going to move out, a lot faster. If it's been gradual, like we've had this year, that season's going to extend. We're still catching a lot of flounder here in North Carolina. For me, I really wasn't catching anything in December just because we had such a harsh snap last year. And this year, I'm still catching them in really, really good numbers. I was surprised on my last trip that I went out how many flounder I was catching. So now is still a pretty good time to be catching flounder. I'd say, like Luke said, almost down in Florida till probably mid-December. You're still going to be able to get some good flounder fishing here in the Mid-Atlantic.
And same in Texas. I saw someone asked about Corpus Christi area. Don, same in Texas. We're seeing reports in our Insider Club of a lot of flounder. I mean, this week there's been a lot of them. This past weekend there was a ton of flounder reports. So it is still happening from Texas to North Carolina right now, which is cool. Have you ever caught a 10-pounder, Wyatt? If you're going that big?
No, I haven't caught a 10-pounder. I came really close to catching a citation size. Well, I think it was a citation. The season wasn't open. It's been closed here in North Carolina due to some tough commercial fishing that we've been experiencing. Joe, I know you might be talking to somebody about that soon, but it's been tough to keep flounder and actually get records and stuff. And I don't take a scale out with me. So all I have to go off of is the length and the historical, what would a flounder weigh if it's this long. And the biggest one I've caught was 23 inches. But man, it was a fat 23-inch flounder. It was almost as fat as it was long. I'm sure if I weighed that thing, it was probably upwards of 6-7 pounds. It was a giant fish.
So what is the citation limit there, or what's the threshold?
I want to say it's 6 pounds. But that fish definitely was citation weight. I think I don't think they have a citation release length. They have that for some fish like trout here in North Carolina, but not for flounder. You have to weigh it in to get the citation.
Yeah, what Wyatt was talking about is the CCA North Carolina is suing, right? There's a lawsuit, and I'm going to have the head of CCA North Carolina on the podcast next week. What's kind of the overall? Who the heck are they suing? It's about gill nets. So who do you even sue? Is it just the whole commercial fishing industry, or?
Yeah, so basically the way that the fisheries are managed here in North Carolina, it's a little bit different than down in Florida, where you've got, a state agency that's kind of non-biased and the citizens take part in it. You guys were able to have a vote as citizens on whether gill nets should be in your waters or not. We don't have that up here. It's managed by a organization that's not necessarily the state itself. It's called the Division of Marine Fisheries. But it's not connected, to like the wildlife resources. It's kind of weird because most of the people that sit on the committee are commercial fishermen. And
that's convenient.
Oh yeah, and the issue is that flounder have been getting hit by a lot of these gill nets, which is something that no other state has. We've seen a giant decline in flounder stocks. But this is the land of giants up here. So if we could get things straightened out, I mean, the fishery, there would be a lot more 10-pounders around than they are right now, just because the stocks are just hit so hard by these nets, especially in the nursery areas where these fish, the juveniles grow up.
Yeah, there'll be more trout. There'll be more redfish. North Carolina, I mean, you guys have the state or the world record for the red drum, right?
That's correct.
Or at least the national. Yeah.
Yeah, up in Hatteras. Yeah, and I know we've got some really big flounder that have been caught here too. I don't know if it's world record flounder, but definitely some big flatties up here too.
Whew. All right. What about tides? That's an important one. It's one that always comes up. Have you found there is a better tide? I know I've watched some of your videos, and you'll kind of sit there at these creek mouths, and the tide's coming out, right? And some of these, and you're just casting up and popping off the bottom along with it. Is there a better tide for flounder?
Yeah, so you can catch them at both tides. And it's funny, you touched earlier this week, we saw a lot of people that made reports over the weekend that they had really, really good flounder fishing. And the reason for that is I'm pretty sure we had the new moon last weekend. Is that correct?
Sunday, yep.
Yep. So what happened was this big tidal movement occurs where there's, that on new moons, it's going to move a lot more water. So on the bottom of that low tide, there's going to be less water in those small estuaries. They're going to dry up a little bit more. There's going to be more bait that comes out. And those flounder can feel where that tide ebb and flows from. So especially like you said, Joe, at those creek mouths, if you can get there when there's really good tide movement, if the moon phase is going to be displacing a little bit more water, those flounder can feel where that, flow is going to be from. And they're going to concentrate a little bit closer to those creek mouths where all that bait that, usually there might be a couple more inches where some more can kind of sit up in those shallow areas. But with a new moon, that area probably got completely dry. People that, might not have been catching flounder in an area, say a creek mouth, with that increased tidal flow, more of them showed up to that area, higher probability that those people were going to get onto those fish. And that's exactly what happened, especially on outgoing tides. You can sit at those creek mouths, those flounder will sit, directly in the middle of the channel and at the points. That's why I said I only make 2 or 3 casts to feel out a creek mouth, just because it's, I can hit a point, middle of the channel, and the other point, and I know whether there's flounder there or not. They're, to me, the least picky fish if you hit them on the right tide, because that's their opportunity to feed. They're waiting for that conveyor belt of food. That's the reason I like creek mouths, just especially on those outgoing tides. That is a conveyor belt of food for them. You can catch them on incoming tides, but the only problem with that is they're going to, again, turn around and they're going to be looking at the mouth of that creek. So you have to find a way to work around the back of that. And it's a little bit more work, which is why I usually focus my efforts on outgoing tides. But when I was kind of going through some of the modules in the Flounder mini course that I'm creating, I was looking in Florida, and it seemed like there were a lot more areas where there were opportunities for incoming tide spots, because down in Florida, there's not all of the winding creeks and stuff that you have to figure out a way to get back in and work behind. Those flounder that are down in Florida, from talking to Luke and watching the insider reports from him and Tony and kind of studying where those flounder like to hold, it seems like they like the depth changes that are right off of those grass flats. So if there's an incoming tide from the inlet that's bringing in a lot of bait, and that water is washing over one of those flats, or that current is washing over one of those flats, it's going to bring all that bait into that first gut or that depth change. And those flounder, even if it's just a couple inches, they're very flat. They're going to sit right at that depth change, right at the edge of that grass flat. Any kind of lip that you've got coming off of a flat, flounder will sit there and they will just pick off all the bait that's getting washed by that current. Same thing with smaller passes. It's the same kind of concept that we were talking about with creek mouths, and those work great on both incoming, outgoing tides. Just if there's a good steady movement of water, you don't want to be fishing in an area where there's no current. But incoming versus outgoing, I would say it's just dependent on where you can get good positioning. That's probably the biggest thing. I'm not going to say there's one tide that's better than another. It's just about picking spots that you can get into good positioning with, because I catch them all the time on incoming and outgoing. I just tend to have better success in my winding marshes because I can really only get in position without running over fish on outgoing tides.
And talk about that. I know that comes up quite a bit, especially for anglers who are fishing in a kayak. Is you're facing the creek mouth, right? Because you're casting up into it. How are you positioning your kayak so that you're not getting swept away or moved all over the place? And
yeah, so I thankfully Luke has loaned me a pedal kayak from Old Town, and it has been fantastic because I can just put myself in those areas where there's current and just kind of position with the steering knob, and I can work those pedals. But if you don't have a pedal kayak, I did not have one for a very long time, and I've still caught a lot of flounder. What I used was a brush anchor. So that's a really great tool. It's especially with those stick-it anchors that you have to get all the way to the bottom. And, with these creek mouths that are really deep and there's this heavy current, it's kind of hard to get into position with a stick-it anchor. And I don't like traditional anchors, just because they make a lot of noise. A lot of times with the mud that we have here in North Carolina, they'll continue to slide until they hit an oyster rock. So, I may deploy that grapple anchor and it's going to slide, 10 yards and then I'm out of position. But the brush anchor is really, really good because if, let's say I've got a creek mouth in front of me and that tide's coming out, I'll move, to the south side of that creek mouth where the water is going to be flowing towards me. And I'll take my brush anchor, which is basically a giant, clip with jaws on it that I'll grab onto that grass with. If you're down in Florida, you'd be able to grab onto mangrove branches, things like that. And you can have it tied to your kayak and it's much more secure. And you don't have to have, shallow water like the stick it pins do. And you can just clip onto that grass and that current's going to be coming towards you. Again, you're not going to be able to work as many angles as you would in a pedal kayak, but you can still work that downward flow of current that those flounder are going to be sitting in, clipped a little bit south of that creek mouth. So I used the brush anchor a lot when I didn't have the pedals, but now that I have the pedals, basically I'm just sitting in that flow of current. And I had a video recently where I had a drone view of exactly how I was working that creek mouth, basically just hitting the angle of the point, hitting the middle of the channel, and then hitting the other point. And I would just move on to the next creek mouth. You really have to play that numbers game because flounder will let you know if they're there. And usually if you find one, there's 2 or 3 more that are sitting there. But if I'm not finding anything, next creek mouth. I have 6 or 7 creek mouths that I plan out when I go flounder fishing, just because it's a numbers game with these fish. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not, but you can feel it out in 3 casts and really make the most of your time when you're out on the water if you do that planning beforehand.
Sweet. Luke, Sebastian, you mentioned fishing that quite a bit. I know one time we were there with Deeks and we passed that guy who is known as like the flounder king of Sebastian Inlet. Do you remember that?
No, but go ahead.
So anyhow, apparently this guy wins like every tournament there. He's got all the records in terms of size, and like that's just all he does. He is the flounder guy. I believe he's got a commercial license for him. And he just has these things dialed in. And he was anchored there almost like dead in the middle of Sebastian. And it was definitely incoming because I remember, his boat was looking at us when we were waving to him as we went by. Is that the time that you were fishing in the passes, or is there a better time when you're talking about the passes and the inlets?
Yeah, I didn't care about the direction, incoming, outgoing. I just wanted to be moving. So anything other than slack. Outgoing has a slight advantage because just everything's flushed out, or is flushing out, but there's still a lot of bait being moved on the incoming, and flounder seem to really like the heavy current areas. And so like that guy, I don't remember that exact situation, but a good strategy for Sebastian Inlet is to actually fish the middle of the channel, because there's a lot of rocks in there. Where they usually will position, they do like structure, but they're designed to lay on sand or something flat. So if there's some rocks or jetties or seagrass, they're rarely going to be on top of it. They'll almost always be right on the bottom next to the side of it. So if you're fishing rock piles or ledges that there's a lot of in Sebastian Inlet, they're going to be right on the edge. And so that guy, the people who really crush them, they know the specific little ledges that hold the most flounder, and they anchor themselves right on top of it. So they can sit there and just pick them off one at a time. If you don't know where those spots are, which most people don't. And the best way to find them is what I used to do is I would just drift through the pass, and the same thing works in any pass or inlet. So it doesn't have to be Sebastian, but I would drift through, get a jig head. Paddle tails seem to work better. Like the slam shadies are awesome for it. Gulp shrimp can work too. I used to use gulp pogies as well. But instead of using a normal jig head, get a weedless one. I don't have one near me, but Mission Fishing has some. We actually have some on our tackle store. The Mission Fishing ones that have that weed guard, and that way you can sit there and bounce on the bottom and just have it straight down, just vertical, and bounce on the bottom. Feel the bottom every drop. Feel that bottom. Then when you hit a rock, note it. Right. If you go through an area, you're hitting a bunch of rocks, odds are there's going to be flounder nearby. And the fact that you have the weed guard on there, you're not going to get snagged very often at all. It's actually kind of tough to get snagged when you're vertical fishing with a weedless jig head. The bad thing about the weedless jig heads is you are going to miss some strikes, but it's worth it. You will definitely catch fish. You will definitely miss some strikes, but you're going to get snagged way less often than ever before. And most importantly, you're going to be able to start logging the different rock structures in the jetty. So that would be a good tip to do if you're new to a spot, to just try to start learning it.
Cool, that's solid. Talk about bucktails, because I know with Skinner that's probably his go-to. I know it's the go-to for a lot of flounder anglers. Wyatt, thoughts on good old-fashioned bucktail? Oh, you're holding one right there, right? It almost blended in with your beautiful little turtleneck there.
Mock turtleneck, yeah. So bucktails are extremely effective, especially with doormats. So, we're talking about this big transition that flounder are going through right now. This, I know, especially here in North Carolina, when you're fishing those jetties, and I saw we did have a question from someone that was in Corpus Christi, Texas. I know there's some really big jetties down in Texas too. This exact same strategy is going to work there. Those big breeding flounder that are moving out, their last pit stop before their big journey offshore, we've talked about how they like structure. They're not going to hold directly on structure, but they're going to stay close to it. Those jetties are their last pit stop to get food before they make this big journey offshore. So they're sitting there, they're feeding, and then they're going to transition. Right now is the time that they're feeding. So if you can get on those jetties and you know where that structure is, bucktails with some kind of trailer on them, you can put the Slam Shady Bomber, you can put the Paddler Z, you can put, I know a lot of guys here like to use those Gulp Grubs. That's a really big one here just because they got that curly tail on them, got a little bit of action as they drop. And again, vertical movements are really big for flounder. They're always looking up. They've got kind of a cone of vision. So the more vertical movements that you can make while still keeping it close enough to the bottom that on the pause, it's going to come back down in their strike zone. That's great. Bucktails are like the primo bait to be, or primo lure to be using. You can use it without a trailer as well. I know Skinner's course, that is like the number one thing that he used. He did kind of tip it sometimes with some flounder belly of some ones that he caught just to give it a little extra scent. But you can use just bare bucktails. You can troll them, you can bounce them, and they're extremely effective. Up north where Skinner's fishing, you're basically just going to be trolling along any of those ledges, and those flounder sit. You can watch those videos because we've got them on our site. Those flounder literally sit right on that ledge, and as soon as they see that bucktail come over that ledge, whether you're trolling it or bouncing it, they're going to start following it. And it seems like every time that lure starts to make a vertical descent downward, that's when that flounder comes up and grabs it. So after watching those videos, I adjusted my retrieve to do that twitch, pause, and I can really feel out an area. And once I've done that, I know that I've given that flounder every opportunity to hit that lure. And it seems like, when I'm fishing a lot faster, I still will have flounder that will actually come up to my kayak. I've seen them come up before and try to take a swipe of that lure as I'm pulling it out, just because that's their last chance. They'll sit there and they'll follow it, but they're not going to chase it mid-column most times. That happens very rarely, but I've seen it occur. So this is a great bait for fishing deep water just because it's got a good aerodynamic head that's going to get down deep, and you can really feel the bottom with this thing. I have not gotten a chance to use these on jetties. I have used them inshore, and I have caught flounder with them as well. So if you're working a deep channel or you're working a ledge out at a pass, you can use these from the surf. I know a lot of guys that catch flounder off piers with them. They're such a versatile lure. I mean, it's fantastic. You can add a lot to them. You can really customize them any way you want. I would say if I wasn't going to use, if I didn't have access to paddle tails, if this COVID-19 thing occurs, it keeps going, and I don't have access to paddle tails, I'll probably end up using a bucktail just because it's going to accomplish the same thing that I'm looking for out of that paddle tail. Those feathers are going to have some nice movement in the water as well. But luckily I've got a bunch of Slam Shady Bombers, so I don't have to worry about that.
Dude, we have so many Slam Shady paddle tails coming in. It is going to be impossible for you to run out, COVID or not.
There we go.
That's our promise to you guys. We got them in at fishstrong.com. Yeah. And by the way, I know I said it last week. You guys won't believe this. And you can email Daniel Nussbaum, the president and CEO of Z-Man, if you don't believe me. So last Tuesday, we talked about, we just got an email, like the order is on its way, and it got lost. And if you guys don't know the backstory, the Z-Man Slam Shady color in 3 different of their molds was the number one top selling color for paddle tail in the Minnow Z in the entire world. That's crazy. And so like, this is the hottest, color. It's catching more fish. It's breaking records. We got now, I think 80 different species. And then they ran out and COVID hit. We put this monster order back in March. So this has been going on for this long, this monster order in, and like everything that could possibly go wrong. I mean, Z-Man having to shut down for quite some time. They've had multiple people get COVID. And every time that happens, they got to shut the entire plant down, clean the whole place out. Anyone who's around that person has to go out for quarantine for 2 weeks. Like, it's just been I feel horrible for them because they just can't keep up with the demand. And then you had more people than ever fishing this summer because they couldn't do anything else. You had more new people coming in, and a paddle tail is probably the easiest lure to go out there and just catch a ton of fish. And so like, we sold out, Z-Man sold out. And we finally get this order. They finally get them in last week. It ships and FedEx loses it. No lie, they actually lost the shipment. They found it and it's on its way, and it's supposed to get here any day now. It's somewhere in Atlanta. So if you're in Atlanta and you want to help us out and maybe go to FedEx and just drive it down, might get here quicker. It's just been absolutely crazy. But know that we have a big order coming in any day now at fishstrong.com. So we will have, I think now 5 or 6 different sizes and kind of different looking paddle tails in the Slam Shady. So we are going to have a lot. And we have like on the 2.0, we just got quite a few thousand more packs in. And that sounds like a lot, and it is. But man, we burn through those sometimes in a few weeks. Like it's been nuts how well these are selling because they just flat out work. The toughest part now is just getting jig heads to support them. It's been nuts. So Luke, you have something you want to share your screen? I see you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that those bucktails are solid, and this tip in particular. I don't know if can you see the screen?
Yep.
This one is extremely helpful for the retrieve. This is one of Skinner's inputs. So he has some amazing underwater video footage of flounder, reacting to lures, tracking them down, striking them, and you'll see how aggressive these fish are. These are not fish that go up and nibble on the lure or the bait. They slam it. They're not playing around. They're a very aggressive fish, and so if you want to see it, just Google search, flounder fishing tips, and you can put salt straw on the end of it, and you'll see it on there. It's excellent. It has a really good video, so highly recommend checking it out. But one reason why I don't use bucktails, for those who've seen my videos where I not rarely use bucktails, is because with flounder, they're not the pickiest of eaters. They're super aggressive, and they're usually holding near hard structure. Which means with bucktails, they're rarely weedless, and they're very easy to get snagged. And so it can be costly. That's the reason. They catch a bunch of fish, but the Slam Shadies or any paddle tail, any soft plastic on a jig head, the combined price is going to be usually much less than a bucktail. And then when you can actually make the soft plastic one weedless, that's when it becomes, at least in my opinion, a game changer, because you can get down there right in the slop, right in that hard structure, bounce through it, and you're going to get way more strikes. Even though you'll miss some strikes, because of the weedless nature, you need to have a more stout rod, have a better hook set, but you're going to get snagged way less often. You're going to have much less frustration. And so what Skinner does is he usually is drifting the big inlets, and he's vertical fishing, just drifting through the cut. It's a lot of sand and you can see like little patches of grass and stuff, and those flounder are just kind of scattered throughout. At least like especially Sebastian Inlet, if you're bucktailing for flounder, you're going to go through a lot of bucktails. And if you want to have the least amount of frustration, then those weedless jig heads with soft plastic is really, really hard to beat. And one thing that's unique to flounder is just how aggressive they are. Is that I've had multiple times where I hook one, I'm getting it up, and they're pretty good. Like they do some pretty violent head shakes, and the hook comes out. And what they'll do is they usually just go straight down the bottom and sit. And they are so aggressive that if you just sit there and then bounce a lure around that same area, they'll hit it again. I've got multiple flounder on the second chance, right? So I hook it, I actually see it, I see the size. It goes right down like halfway. One in particular, I was fishing the dock. I pulled it 20 feet from the dock. It got off 10 feet in front of me, and it just went down. I was in 5 feet of water, and I just sat there, and I was just pitching the jig, bouncing on the bottom, and the third cast, it hit it, and I caught it. So they're just it's a unique thing for flounder is that when they feel a little bit stressed, they're just going to get on the bottom and sit. And if you put a lure in front of their face, they will eat it. Even if you literally had that same lure hooked in their mouth, they will eat it again.
Yeah,
which is cool.
That video, if you guys don't believe Luke, it's in the Flounder Mastery course in the bonus module. I've not gotten that to happen. Usually I'm fishing really deep, so I see them shoot off. I have no idea where they went. I just, I'll move to the next creek mouth. But I saw that and I was just like, man, that's so true. They're super, super aggressive. And that's, like I've said, you can roll that lure in front of that creek mouth, 2-3 times. You'll know if there's flounder there because they're going to hit it if you can get it in their strike zone.
Yep. So I'm sorry. What you got?
Yeah, I was about to say, I also had a cool video. Let me see if I can even find it. I can't find it on here. But when they're on the bottom, they feel secure. Like that's their secure zone. So even if they were just hooked, they're on the bottom, they feel secure. That's their safe space. And I actually caught one when lobster diving in the Keys. I saw one, and I had my lobster net, those little small nets that you have a little small short handle. And I literally went down there and put the net over it and caught it. It was like a 14-incher. Just that you can just get really close to them. A lot of people gig for them. Go out at night and gig for them because they will literally just sit there thinking that they're camouflaged, and you can just walk right up to them or be in a boat with lights, and you can get a lot of flounder that way as well.
Mark asked, caught a couple flounder on paddle tails in Rockport, Texas this weekend. It's a fun little area there. Never catch them down by Marco Island, too far south.
No, Marco has some. They're not,
not as many.
Not as many. I've caught some. I fished on Marco a lot. Growing up, we went there a lot and caught some, but not as many as Tampa, which has less than further north. So they're there. It's really hard to target them there because like snook, that's the snook territory. That's like the best snook fishing I've ever seen down there. So now when I go down that way, it's targeting snook.
I see a question from Jake Brannigan. He said he didn't have a lot of luck with flounder around the Space Coast. He said he'd love to catch one just to check it off the new species bucket list. Yeah, so just thinking about the Space Coast area, there's, just at least in the Mosquito Lagoon zone, I know Tony's there. There's not, as we've talked about, flounder's hunting habits are really based around tidal movements. And there, it's a lot of wind-driven current. So your best bet would be to look towards those areas where there's higher current than the surrounding zones. For example, you've got like the Haulover Canal area, which there's increased current versus a lot of the other zones in that area because it's just a choke point. Flounder really congregate around choke points just because there's always going to be that conveyor belt of food. If you think about, is this a good flounder spot? Does it have a conveyor belt of current that's going to consistently bring those flounder food? That's what you need to look for. And on the Space Coast, there's just not a whole lot of those, but there are still some. And Tony catches flounder in his reports down in Mosquito Lagoon. If you guys aren't insiders, you could see those and see where those types of spots are, but they're definitely down there. You just really got to look for those choke points where there's current. That's where they're going to feed.
Yeah, and for the Space Coast, depending on where you live there, it'll probably be worth the drive to go to the Canaveral Inlet, whatever that's like. I'm losing the name of it. But the big that inlet, it's north of Sebastian. What's the name of that place, Joe, that we launched with Deeks?
It's Port Canaveral.
Yeah, but there's a bait shop. So now there's public access on the south side, and you can fish along those rocks. And now's the time to be there.
It's called Jetty Park. I don't remember the name of the place.
Yeah, Jetty Park. That was the term I was thinking of. So that like now's the time. So there are some in the Indian and Banana Rivers and Mosquito Lagoon. They're scattered around. It's not. I don't think there's enough there to target. From my time being there and just the reports I've been seeing in the community. But when you get to those inlets, it's a different ball game. Those inlets that's where the majority of them will be. Sebastian is the best because it just has so much water movement going through there. But I would say the that Jetty Park should have a decent amount as well. But you'll be fishing the rocks, so you'll be fishing hard structure. So make sure to have something weedless. Otherwise, you'll go through an absolute ton of gear. But you can get it by land. You can get a very good access to big flounder by land over there.
Yep. Randy asked an interesting question. Have we finished testing the shrimp yet? The shrimp lure that you guys have seen now. Gosh, it's probably been 7 or 8 months, right?
No, not that. It's been a long. It's been a while. It's been most of the summer. And so, yes, the answer is yes. And we actually have some coming, and they're actually made and they're en route. So that's
Check this out, Randy. Hi. I don't know if you guys can see that there. That's the packaging. So this is being done right now. We're testing out just the packaging. And for those of you guys who still made it this far with us, it's called the Power Prawn in the Slam series. The Power Prawn. This thing is so stinking tough. It is catching monster fish. I mean, some of the biggest flounder, ironically, monster snook, redfish, trout, everything. I have a feeling there's going to be like DOA is going to be like, oh my gosh, this thing is so much better than our little DOA shrimp.
You can add triple tail to the list too, Joe. So one of the triple tail I caught on Saturday was on it.
And that was one of your PBs too, huh?
Yeah, I was throwing the leprechaun. I caught the first one, the Alabama leprechaun. It slammed it, and then the second one, for whatever reason, it just didn't seem to want it. And we got closer, and it went down, and then it came back up. And when it went down, I was getting that shrimp lure, which had a heavier weight on there, to like just drop one and go straight down the crab trap buoy. And then it came up, and so I had the rod in my hand. I was like, whatever, I'm throwing it, and throw it in there, and it slammed it. And so I don't know which one was. They're both. One was 23 inches, one was 23 and a half. I don't know which one got the bigger one, but they were close. Either way, those were my two best ones, and it was cool. So
it just attracts big fish, and it's so tough. That's why it's called Power Prawn. It's tough to tear it. It's got some of the best breaking strength. We even put it in a microwave. Do not try this at home. It stunk up my house for quite some time, but we put it in there with a handful of other popular lures, and it won't melt. I put it in there for 2.5 minutes. And by the way, like, let's just say like a DOA shrimp, like after 30 seconds, it's melted. It's literally just gel. And I put this thing in for 2.5 minutes. It's not even remotely hot. I don't know what the heck they put in this stuff, but it is awesome material. And it just flat out catches big fish. Yeah, stay tuned. We're hoping to have all that before Christmas. That makes a great stocking stuffer. Hopefully, I know like my wife, she's like, if it's not there by end of November, you've missed it out. I was like, no, like most guys like do their Christmas shopping the week before Christmas, if not 2 days before Christmas. So we plan on having it right before Christmas, and we'll be getting them out same day, getting them out fast, first class shipping. So stay tuned. We're hoping that happens. But certainly before that, we'll have the Z-Man Slam Shadies in stock. And we got an email from Daiwa. I'll give you all you guys the great updates if you make it this far. Our friends there at Daiwa, they have got a big order of Fuegos in 2,500 and 3,000 on the way. We have the 1,000s in. Those are selling like crazy. The 1,000s are in, but we have the 2,500s and the 3,000s coming in. We got all the Pin Battle 3s in right now. We have the Quantums in. Some of the Shimano's are coming, and that's all at fishstrong.com. Fishstrong.com, and a ton of new lures on there as well. So what you about to show, Luke?
Yeah, Fuego 2,500. This is the triple tail setup, and this was hammering it. There's a lot of people say that the frame flexes. There's been the only con that I've heard on these reels. I at least haven't seen it. I caught the cobia and one of the triple tail on it on Saturday, and I love that reel. It's awesome. I'm excited to have more coming.
All right, Wyatt, we've got a couple more minutes. Finish us up with a little bit more about this Flounder mini course that you're doing for the insiders. You've been working so hard on. What else should we expect?
Yeah, so basically in this course, I go over everything you really need to know, and I covered a ton of different zones. From Texas to Florida up to the Carolinas. Any type of environment that you would be finding flounder in, I covered it. And I basically talked about positioning. I talked about what makes those spots good. I talked about some kind of advanced tactics once you get past that basic spot selection, went over all the best type of baits, not just paddle tails, because they will hit other things. And, this power prawn is going to be here at the best time of the year when it's wintertime and that, big bait fish migration occurs as well. All those bait fish move out. There's not a whole lot that's available for those juveniles that are inshore, those shrimp that are going to be there as well. That's, stuff that I cover in the course, what types of baits you're going to want to choose, when to deploy them, the best positioning. And I also shared probably 3 of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when they start fishing for flounder, and the 3 biggest tips that I have to kind of jump that learning curve and get ahead of flounder fishing so that you can really maximize your results out on the water. That's stuff that I've never shared, stuff I've never put in all of the videos that you guys may have seen on the public side, even some stuff that I've shared with the insider tips alone. These are 3 of probably my best tips I've ever given on flounder. So I'm really excited to share this with my insiders and for anybody that wants to join the club and get access to that course as well.
Yeah, and that's why those courses are so powerful. It's just tying everything in together. There's a lot of great stuff out there. Even the stuff that we put out on YouTube, obviously, we think it's great. It's the free stuff. We save all of our best stuff for our insider members. But the courses in general are just so powerful because it's comprehensive. It's just step by step. It's instructional videos on everything you could possibly imagine. Because what I find myself doing on, let's just say, new species, if I go to YouTube and I watch a 15-minute video, which is a pretty long video, and I still find myself like asking like 50 questions, right? Like, well, how did they rig it? Like, why did they pick that kind of spot? And they're always just answering just a small piece of it. Whereas these courses, you have every single thing you could possibly ask. So if you go through it, and even like those 3 courses we give to all of our new insider members, if you go through those 3 courses, like you will know more, you will be armed and dangerous, and you'll know more than 98% of all weekend warriors out there about finding the feeding zones, finding the best spots, what lures or bait to use, and then ultimately how to use it to attract strikes. It takes a little bit longer than watching a 10-minute video, but gosh, so does going to college. So does trying to be an expert at anything, right? Anytime you want to master something, you might want to put a couple hours of studying into it to try to become better. And that's what these mastery courses are for. And we just did a survey with our insider members. Thank you guys for filling it out. And I'm blown away how many people said like these courses have literally changed my fishing game.
That was one of the top things.
It was. So that was really, really cool. And so, yeah, Wyatt, we're pumped about this one. What are we calling it? Flounder Mastery Mini Course or Flounder Mini Course or? Yeah,
just the Flounder Mini Course. And I do want to mention one more thing. You guys, you may watch videos on YouTube or, instructional stuff, and you watch it, you still have those questions like Joe said. Great thing about these mini courses is you have access to all the coaches on the Salt Strong team with these mini courses. If you want to ask me a question after you've watched the videos, I will literally be responding to people that watch this course. Me and Tony do spot the sections for different types of species, different types of areas. So if you want your area dissected for what would be a good flounder spot, you can literally ask that in the mini course, and we'll do it as part of our weekly spot dissection. So really interactive, and you can really figure out what you want to know, plus a ton of other stuff that you didn't even know to ask with all these courses. So I'm really excited to get it out for you guys.
Yep. Join us today. saltstrong.com. You can join the Insider Club. You will automatically get this new mini course in your account the second we have it done, including all the other, I feel like there's 18 or so other little mini courses, including one on triple tail, cobia. There's some really, really amazing courses that you get for free as an insider when you join today. So thank you guys so much. And then finally, thank you to Wyatt's mom for knitting such a special mock turtleneck for her little boy there. Looking really, really nice. And we do need to get you on a video catching a big fish in your turtleneck.
Well, me and Luke can probably make that happen later this week. So we'll have it happen. I'll get a big. I'll have to land a lunker in Luke's face in the mock turtleneck.
Yeah, coming down to Florida, and we'll see if we can pick off a flounder and bring the turtleneck down.
Cool. Well, guys, we all appreciate you. Thank you so much. Keep posting the questions. If you're watching this after it goes live, or if you happen to be listening to the podcast, we'll have it all at saltstrong.com/podcast. And you also can see a lot of the tips in the fishing tip section. Of course, our insider members get access to the whole kit and caboodle, including the private community and all the little mini courses. And now I think 400 and something instructional videos on everything you could possibly want to know to go out there and catch more inshore saltwater fish. And of course, 20% off all of this tackle we have coming in, including the upcoming Power Prawn, including the Z-Man Slam Shading. And we are going to let our insiders know about it first. So when it comes in, I apologize because we have to serve our insiders first, and I know they're going to go quick. Our insider members are going to get a private email about the Z-Man Slam Shadies coming in before we take it pushed out live for everyone else. We want to give you guys first shot. So we appreciate you, love you, and we'll talk to you guys on the next episode. We out. Peace. See you guys.
'Cause fishing